Good evening and welcome back to the Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025 meeting. We are beginning the portion at 7 p.m., which will include two public hearings. And I'll just double check. Councillor Wiley, are you with us?
Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a motion that Council approve a capital budget amendment up to $800,000 funded out of the Water Reserve for the Township Road 240 water main modifications, notice of which this work was to be undertaken and was received from Wheatland County following the approval of the town's 2025 budget for the following items: $729,000 for construction, $20,000 for insurance, and a $51,000 contingency on the terms and conditions specified in the RFD, and that the details of this RFD that was shared during our in-camera session be made public.
Thank you for that motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We move now to item 4, public hearing. 4.1, land use bylaw amending bylaw number 25-14, child care services as a discretionary use in the commercial highway district. So this deals with it moving to a discretionary use. This public hearing for bylaw number 25-14 is in session at 7:03 p.m. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act RSA 2000, Chapter M-26, and amendments thereto. Legislative Services.
Thank you, Worshiping Council. The purpose of the public hearing is to discuss bylaw 25-14, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw. First reading was given during the June 4th, 2025 regular council meeting. The public hearing was advertised in the following ways. On June 5th, 2025, notice of the public hearing was posted on the town's website. June 18th, 25th, and July 2nd, 2025, notice of the public hearing was posted in the Strathmore Times. And from June 5th to July 2nd, 2025, a banner ad was on Strathmore Now's website. To date, one written submission was received from Kimberly McCutcheon. This submission was included in the agenda for this public hearing that was publicly released on Friday, June 27th, 2025.
Thank you. Pursuant to the town's council procedure bylaw, the following rules of conduct shall be followed during the public hearing to ensure procedural fairness. No person shall address council without the permission of the mayor. No person shall speak more than once or for more than 5 minutes, exclusive of the time required to answer questions from council. All discussion must be related to the proposed amendments contained in bylaw number 25-14. No other matters will be discussed at this time. Respect for staff, council, and the public shall always be maintained, and any person who wishes to address council shall please state their name and spell it. A reminder, this is the public's time to provide feedback to council relating to this bylaw amendment. Council is not required to answer questions from the gallery. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes, and there will be no debating the bylaw. Would administration like to speak? Kate, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Member of Council. Today I will be presenting bylaw 25-14, which proposes to add child care services as a discretionary use within the CHWY Highway Commercial District under the town's land use bylaw. I would like to remind that the land use bylaw is a planning tool used to regulate the use of land and buildings. It's not a tool to regulate businesses. To begin, it's important to understand the significance of discretionary use designation. Unlike permitted use, discretionary use are not guaranteed approval, even if they are listed in the land use bylaw. Approval depends on a variety of site-specific factors. Whenever a development permit for a discretionary use is approved, adjacent landowners are notified, a notice of decision may be posted, and the public has 21 days to appeal to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. So why is this approach being recommended for childcare services in the CHWY district? Designating childcare as a discretionary use allows the town to maintain control and flexibility when reviewing proposals, apply site-specific conditions such as fencing or access management. This approach helps us support new childcare options while balancing potential impact. We also looked at how other municipalities regulate childcare services. For example, in Calgary, childcare is a discretionary use in numerous commercial and industrial districts. Chesmer actively supports childcare in commercial zones, with some districts allowing it as a permitted or discretionary use. Similarly, in Okotoks, Cochrane, and Airdrie, childcare is often a discretionary use in highway commercial and industrial business zones. This shows us that adding childcare services as a discretionary use in our highway commercial district aligns with regional practice. In Strathmore, childcare continues to be an issue. As part of the process, I reached out to existing daycare operators in Strathmore and received responses from them. Based on their responses, we are seeing high demand, especially for infants aged 20-36 months. Staffing shortage limiting the ability of centers to expand or even remain open, and barriers such as high rental costs, zoning limitations, and the lack of green space in available commercial properties. While some operators believe we are meeting current demand, others describe the situation as a daycare desert. CHWY district, Highway Commercial District, is situated along major transportation routes, making it highly accessible for parents who commute to work. It provides a convenient and practical option for pickup and drop-off. Additionally, daycares are typically low-impact daytime uses, meaning they are generally compatible with the commercial and service-oriented nature of CHWY district. From a land efficiency standpoint, this also helps utilize existing commercial space to meet a growing demand for childcare. When it comes to issuing a development permit for a daycare as discretionary use, there are several key factors we evaluate. First, we assess traffic flow and access to ensure that there is safe and efficient circulation for both vehicles and pedestrians, including adequate parking. We also review the site layout, ensuring it includes appropriate outdoor play areas and fencing. And finally, we look at safety, design compliance, and whether the scale and capacity of the daycare are appropriate for the location. To conclude, administration recommends that council proceed with the public hearing for bylaw number 25-14 on July 2nd, 2025, and that council take into consideration all information and feedback received during the public hearing. Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Kate, by moving this to, or changing this, or having this amendment go to discretionary use, it would allow for case-by-case analysis of what's coming to us for daycares in commercial areas?
Yes, usually, yes.
And it would put this decision-making in the hands of the trained planners?
Yes, but before we make a decision, we always have consultation with the different departments like engineers, fire, also Alberta child care regulations. It's also important. And we collect all of these comments, and based on their vision and our vision, we make a decision.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. Can you give me an example of a highway commercially zoned area or building that you would identify as not appropriate for childcare at this point?
It's difficult to say, but as for me, it could be in the south of Strathmore, south part of Highway Commercial District, because it's like close to industrial. I'm not sure that it will be appropriate, but it depends because, for example, in Calgary, we have a lot of examples when daycares in industrial areas, and this is discretionary use. That's why it's difficult to say it's case by case, but I think it's case by case mostly.
Yeah, what I'm looking to do is to test the discretion, I guess, that would be applied, and so that's why I'm asking for an example of a location currently that's highway commercial that would be deemed not appropriate.
Jamie, did you want to weigh in?
Sure. So through the chair, if council were to approve the bylaw tonight, it's not for council to test the discretion. The test of the discretion is the appeal process of the permit. So if a permit were appealed by the department, by the planning staff, that decision could be appealed if they felt differently about that decision. Thank you.
Like, we are being asked right now to give administration license or the ability to decide this, though, aren't we?
Through the chair, you're amending the bylaw. The bylaw is the document which staff uses to approve or not development permits. That's what council is being asked to do tonight. Approve, amend the bylaw, your bylaw,
Yep.
which staff uses as a tool to approve development permits or not. That's what council is being asked to do this evening.
The amendment is to see if we approve of discretionary use being done in the decision-making process on childcare in commercial highway districts. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Actually, Mr. Dugdale, maybe you could clarify for me then what it is council is considering then when we are deciding this decision.
Through the chair, if this bylaw were approved tonight, then
No, I'm asking, as part of our decision here, what are we considering, and whether we're determining if it's appropriate or not, what factors should we be considering?
you could consider the purpose and intent of the district, right? You also heard tonight, staff presented the process by which we approve development permits. So we consult different departments within the town, as well as external to the town, mainly Alberta Child Care. So we use all that information to come to a decision before we approve a permit. So you're,
And so you would say it's inappropriate for me to ask administration for an example, a current example of somewhere that you or your department would not approve?
we're not going to invent hypothetical situations where we would or wouldn't approve. A lot of things can be done on site to mitigate adjacency factors. We don't know those things. Without an application before us, I'm not going to suppose or create a hypothetical situation where staff would or wouldn't approve that. I don't think that's appropriate for council to ask.
I think if we're looking strictly at the topic in this public hearing, we're trying to decide if we want to make it, if we agree with an amendment that would have each example or each case of childcare in a commercial highway district be treated in a discretionary manner versus an approved manner across the board. And then as part of that, it would go to the planning department that would use all of these tools at their resources to make the decision. So we're looking at an amendment to deal with the idea that these types of projects in commercial areas would be looked at as a individual case by case versus a blanket approval, which
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but currently the process is that this would go before council. Each instance would go before council's discretion, and we are talking about turning our discretion over to administration. And so that's why I am asking, I guess I'm asking, and as part of trying to determine if this is an appropriate zone for this type of activity, since administration is recommending that we turn over the reins on this decision, that's why I'm trying to find out, what does administration consider an appropriate part of the highway commercial zone for childcare versus inappropriate. I just want to see if that aligns with my own personal perspective, I guess. So that's why I'm asking for an example of that. As previously, I'll just leave it at that for now. I'm trying to collect information, and it sounds like administration does not have any examples of where it would be appropriate or not appropriate in the highway commercial zone at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Peterson.
I just think, Your Worship, that in terms of Councillor Montgomery's question, that I do believe that from pages 13 through to 17 and even through to 19, that it does go through with great detail all the steps that our administration would go through no matter where an application had been set. So it would, be site dependent, as the director pointed out, and that it would follow it very, very carefully. So I think, just to help Councillor Montgomery to answer his question, if he read those pages, I think it would give him the information he required.
Through the chair, if I could perhaps clarify. So perhaps, the typical things we look at on a development permit application are, height and mass of the building, landscaping, parking, egress, ingress, egress. So if any of those things weren't appropriate in an application for a daycare on a site, we could refuse it because it's discretionary use. But to kind of come up with a scenario, I just don't think that would be appropriate in this situation. But if they came in and there was no parking allowed for the daycare use based on the bylaw, we would probably refuse it. If there was, egress or access or egress that wasn't appropriate from an engineering perspective, from a safety perspective, we probably wouldn't approve it. But again, I can't think of those things. I can't kind of invent those scenarios on the spot. Sorry.
Deputy Mayor Mitzner.
Do you take into consideration traffic count and traffic patterns? Exits and inserts?
Through the chair, I don't know if Ethan wants to add anything. I'm not an engineer, but typically we would look at the road standard that's already built. For example, if it's a collector, is it a local road? Those roads are built for a certain amount of traffic. And if the proposed use doesn't overload that road, we would likely approve it. Is that fair, Ethan?
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do,
Sorry,
Your Mayor.
Councillor Wiley.
I do appreciate administration's answers. For those people at home, page 14 of the agenda package does outline some of the ways administration would decide. So my question is just going to be specifically about one event. On May 28th of this year, a weapon was brandished toward children playing at one of these childcare services just off the highway. My question then is specifically, will administration require any additional coordination with emergency services, particularly given this exposure to sort of the more transient populations that the highway brings? Thank you.
Kate or Mr. Dugdale?
Through the chair, the simple answer is no. That being said, we do circulate applications, or we can circulate applications to the RCMP for their comment, and we do that typically, depending on the type of application. The feedback we often get from them, though, sometimes is based on site design and criminal prevention through environmental design. Those are the type of comments we get back from the RCMP. So that would be my answer to that question.
Any further question, Councillor Wiley?
Sure do. So it sounded like there was mixed reviews from the current childcare providers as to whether or not there were vacancies. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, it's correct.
So some said that they have lots of vacancies, and others said they have waiting lists.
Yeah, it's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's all my questions.
Thank you. Any further questions for Kate or Mr. Dugdale? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to bylaw number 25-14? I believe we had one person. Two? Okay. If you wouldn't mind coming forward and stating your name.
Hello, Council. Nice to see you again. Nice celebrations yesterday, too, for Canada Day, so thank you for putting those on. Just wanted to point out again that there is permitted use of liquor stores and gas bars in the commercial highway district. And so my concern here would be that if the town did at some point evaluate an existing situation to put a childcare, and let's say it's the first office or the first place that's going in along the highway, and at the time it looks like there's plenty of parking and lots of safe egress for the kids to go in and out. What happens later on when the owner of that business or that property decides they want to put a liquor store right beside it? What happens when, because from the bylaw that's written right now, it's permitted use. It's not discretionary to do that. Also, same goes with gas bars as well. That's a permitted use along the commercial highway district. Also, drive-throughs are permitted as well. So at the time, you could allow someone to put a childcare facility in there, but the circumstances will change over time. I'm not confident that you can see into the future to know exactly what that business or that property owner is going to do. And so I'm wondering what happens to the childcare situation when the business owner decides to put a gas bar in right next door, or a liquor store right next door, or the discretionary use of a cannabis store or an adult entertainment store. What happens then? And so I don't think that it's a great idea to have this right beside the highway. I believe that there is commercial highway district for a reason. I don't believe that reason is childcare, and I don't believe it's safe.
I think the issue before us in the public hearing is whether we agree to amend the bylaw to have this become discretionary use when considering childcare in different commercial highway areas. So that's the issue before us, if we agree with that concept of having it become discretionary versus permitted for childcare.
Okay.
So I can't say much more without presenting one side or the other. I'm supposed to
Worship.
say absolutely impartial.
Again, so it's not permitted versus discretionary. Permitted means anything goes without having to seek the town's permission, basically.
Yes.
Permitted or discretionary means that they would have to apply to the town and then go through the process. And then there's direct control, which is what we saw recently, where council decides. So right now, we're just discussing about whether or not to move from more of a direct control to a discretionary, which would put it in the hands of, there's no talk about permitted use at this point. It's just discretionary versus direct control, I believe.
It was mentioned in one of the earlier preamble pieces in the documents. But yeah, if we do decide to go with this, then it would become discretionary use in the hands of planners who have years of experience and are trained and have years of university training in planning. So there's that also to be considered. Councillor, did you want to finish your statement?
Thank you. I would like to finish a little bit more there. shoot, I lost my train of thought. I do know that what you're trying to do is essentially turn over that decision to administration instead of having it done by council. I believe that this sort of decision to put childcare services along the highway should be a use case specific decision, but I think that decision should be made by council. I'll tell you, in the last, just over the last year, council has turned down, or not turned down, but did not vote to proceed with the daycare just over where the new Arby's is. There's also one where the old bowling alley was, and that was also turned down, and both of those were commercial highway. They weren't.
Your worship, may I?
Nope.
Sorry, Claude, just to
Yeah, yeah.
clarify, on March 20th, 2024, council approved a land use bylaw amendment for a direct control district overlay at 1016 West Ridge Road. That passed at council.
That
You are
passed.
correct, the one most recently did not pass, but
Right.
the one at 1016 West Ridge Road.
Oh, did it?
that
Okay,
was
okay,
voted
my
on in
mistake then. Thank you
March
for
2024
the
did pass.
clarification. Thank you. In any case, I do believe that council has the ability to pass these, and I do think that council should be taking a prudent hand in these decisions. I don't believe that the highway district is the best place to have daycares. I just think that there's a lot of traffic that goes in and out, and dependent on what the owner of the property decides to do later, if you allow it to happen and then they put in a liquor store later, you're not going to stop them from putting their liquor store in. Are you going to revoke their ability to have a childcare? Just trying to think a little past the initial application, right? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker?
Oh, Your worship, if I might ask you a
Councillor Langley?
follow-up question? Claude, if I can ask you a follow-up question. I just want to make sure I understand something.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back, and I'm glad you're here this evening because you mentioned this concern regarding liquor stores and cannabis stores the last time that you presented to council
I
on this
did.
issue, and I just want to make sure I understand what your concerns are. Because liquor stores are a permitted use currently within the central business district, and cannabis stores are currently a discretionary use within the central business district, and childcare services are also a discretionary use within the central business district.
Okay.
So it is in those aspects an identical use case. Within the central business district right now in town, we have 4 childcare facilities within a 250-meter radius of liquor stores and cannabis stores. And I want to understand better if you have a concern with the location of those facilities as they exist now.
I think when it comes to, literally, I don't think liquor stores should be near daycares or schools, for one. And I know that there are prohibitive wording inside of the land use bylaw that sort of prohibit having them a certain distance. And so I believe it is 250 meters. I'm not really sure why daycares don't qualify the same as schools in the same regard. I actually think that should be firmed up. But when you're talking about a commercial highway property, you could literally have the very next door be like within 12 feet of the entrance of a daycare. And so the people that are going to the liquor stores to purchase their liquor or going to the cannabis stores to purchase their cannabis might not be arriving in cars, but they might be in not the greatest of states when they're there. And so I wouldn't want them anywhere near children.
Okay.
I do have concerns, yeah.
Okay. And just to clarify, I think some of the reasons why daycares are not treated the same as schools in those respects is because daycares have a higher level of supervision for children. They don't have direct access to the play yards. You don't have a gate that goes right into the play yard for a random stranger to just walk into the facility. In fact, the daycare centers here in town have locked doors, and the ratios are much higher for supervision per child. You also don't have children that are kind of milling around outside after school or walking home alone. So just to provide you some context on why that might be a bit different, I'm not arguing yes or no either way, just some context on why those situations might be treated differently.
Mr.
That's
Brown, did you
thank
have
you.
did you want to wrap up your comments?
Yeah,
I think what
I'm done,
we
actually.
need to
Thank you.
what we need to kind of get away from is if speakers come up, we don't want to question and get into debates. You can say your statement and then we'll hear you. and then we'll go on to other speakers. So if you would like to wrap up, I'm not sure if you have wrapped up, but
Okay,
I
have
just don't want
wrapped
us
up.
to get debating. I mentioned my comment because I wasn't sure if we were on the topic of the amendment. But
Okay.
carry on.
No, but thank you. No, I have wrapped up. Just thank you for hearing my concerns, and
Thank you.
I hope that you will not be turning this over to discretionary use. Thank you, council.
Thank you. We have a Trish Jane, I believe, who has been online for to speak, and then we have our third speaker after. Trish?
Yeah, good evening, Your Worship, Council, and members of Town of Strathmore. My name is Trish. The spelling is Trish, last name Jane, Jain. I am here to express my support for the proposed amendment to the land use bylaw, which would list the childcare services as a discretionary use in the commercial highway district. I have heard like few comments before my turn, and I just wanted to make sure, yes, I'm just going to talk about the discretionary use here, because the purpose of this land use bylaw amendment is to convert this, the use which is not even allowed, to have the opportunity for business owners to submit a DP application. This just avoids the time-consuming process of the land use redesignation for each individual case, but still ensure that every development permit application is professionally reviewed in accordance with the bylaw, codes, regulation, licensing authorities, and it also still preserves the opportunity for public engagement through the required advertising period. There is still, like, people still have time to provide their opinion, voice, and council can still have the chance to accept the application or not. Like, it is case by case basis, but the purpose of discretionary use is to allow us to submit the application, and then public engagement can be there. However, if it was a permitted use, definitely I understand, like, that is all in control of administration. So this is discretionary use is like one step ahead. I guess I'm just going to reiterate it. Like, this is no, the proposed amendment is no different from any other discretionary uses, where the risk of non-approval always rest with
Trish,
the business
Trish,
owners. The
Trish,
key diffs are not even
Trish.
eligible for consideration.
Trish, we're not hearing a lot
you-
of your comments.
hear me?
You're breaking up a lot, so we're not able to hear
Oh.
your statements very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes?
Okay, maybe I'll try. I've turned off my camera
Okay.
and yeah. So I was just saying the key difference here is that under the current bylaw, childcare services are not eligible for consideration, which represents a significant setback for land developers, especially in a growing market where the demand for childcare continues to rise. In fact, during the development permit process, the public has access to far more specific information, particularly around the site and the building design, and and in comparison to during the land use redesignation process. Often the redesignation decisions are made with limited information, which may not reflect the final outcome. So the proposed amendment allows for better informed public feedback and, more important, transparent decision-making. A team from Town of Strathmore, they have provided great examples that many neighborhood municipalities already list childcare as a discretionary use in commercial zones. There are active daycares and other businesses, and so far there are those municipalities have not shown any concern, and we just request council to consider the approval of this bylaw. So I just consider this, recognizing that the risk still lies with the applicant and public still has the opportunity to provide the input. That's all from my end. Any questions?
Thank you, Trish. Jamie, could I ask you a question? I've been reading on page 7. It says childcare services was included in 2 of the 3 commercial districts districts in land use bylaw number 89-20, which was our previous land use bylaw. And the use is included in 2 of the 3 commercial districts in our current land use bylaw. So for clarification, we're trying to consider whether to have this change to discretionary use, because right now the old land use bylaws are quite different, are they not? Than what's being presented here with that amendment?
So yeah, through the chair, currently, as the last speaker mentioned, daycares is not even a listed use at all in this commercial highway district. So an applicant can't even make an application to staff for that. So the change tonight, again, is contemplating adding it as a discretionary use where staff could review it, use their discretion based on the inputs, based on how the regulations are being met, and then approve it or not approve it, and it would be appealable depending on that approval.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Trish, are you all finished? And thank you for your
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. And we will turn now to our third speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason Hollingsworth, JASON, HOLLINGSWORTH. Sorry, it's a really long last name. Tonight's discussion has taken a different direction than I first anticipated, so I'm going to speak differently than I originally planned. I think sometimes governance is good to have multiple layers, and then I also think governance is good when you remove layers. I think in this instance, moving to discretionary and removing a layer presents a little bit of potential danger for our most vulnerable. An example of where things can get missed and mistakes is that development that we spoke of several months ago now at the end of Grays Park, where it was approved and then not approved and then appealed. And ultimately, I think there was some mistakes made along the way, and mistakes happen. That's life. We're all humans. But I know having it as discretionary, I think, is good. And the reason I say that is I can think of some areas in town where a daycare may be appropriate to have. I can also think areas that I spoke to specifically where it would be inappropriate, like the South Point development. So what I think we should do, or it would be my preference and what I hope council sees, is there's wisdom in having 2 checks and balances with regards to our most vulnerable, that being kids. Let's have council input and then also have planning input, and that way we can hopefully minimize any mistakes made, unforeseen circumstances, etc. And I know there's experts in the town, I'm not suggesting that they're not, but I think it's good to sometimes have 2 completely different sets of eyes on something. And then also there's sometimes that you can leave that to operations. I currently serve as chair of our regulatory board, and I trust very much what they do on the operations side, but also there is some checks and balances we have where we have a bit more oversight as council, and then there's times where we have less. And I think this would be a time where council would want to just leave things as they are. It is still discretionary in some ways. It's discretionary on council, and then it would have to go through the planning and approval process. Does it add a little bit of red tape? Yeah, maybe. But I would hate for something to happen, a mistake made, to remove red tape, and then something happens, right? No one is saying you cannot put a daycare in the commercial highway area. It's discretionary use already. I think it would be good to leave it in council's hands and then the planning department's hands. And that's all I have to say. If there's any questions, I'd happy to take them.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hollingsworth? Thank you. Is there anyone else present who wishes to speak to bylaw number 25-14? Administration, would you like to make any closing comments? Okay. Then I will close the public hearing for bylaw number 25-14, being a bylaw to amend land use bylaw number 14-11 at 7:40 p.m. Land use bylaw amending bylaw number 25-14, childcare services as a discretionary use in the commercial highway district. Kate, are you coming up for a recap?
Yes, please. Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for hearing my presentation during the public hearing. And tonight we will recommend second and third reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. To get the discussion started, I'd like to move that council give second reading to bylaw number 25-14, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw number 14-11.
Thank you for that motion. And did you want to speak to your motion or start off the discussion?
Sure, I'd love to start off the discussion. Thank you. And this was an idea that was brought forward by me as a notice of motion a couple of months ago now. And I'm grateful to have the support of administration. What we've seen in the past on this topic is that we have seen examples of council approving these land use bylaw amendments for direct control districts within the highway commercial district that would permit childcare facilities. And I think that, from my perspective, I think that set the precedent that there are some locations that council would recognize as acceptable for childcare services. There are significant areas of undeveloped highway commercial district areas, in addition to the currently developed areas. There's been a lot of discussion about safety and access to these facilities, and one thing that I've noted is that all of them have off-street parking available, which for me is pretty key in considering the safety of access to these facilities and not having to cross the street. When you think about a bus dropping off kids at school, they have stop signs that come out, and there are laws that you cannot pass, and we have all of these controls in place to keep kids safe when they're crossing the street after they get off a bus, but there's nothing keeping a child safe when you're crossing the street to access a daycare facility. So having this having off-street parking is, to me, a bonus that actually increases the safety for patrons and children. Planning decisions made by this council can't only consider the needs of today, but we also have to consider the forecasted needs of the community for the next 10 to 15 years. And right now, that forecast is telling us that we're expecting significant growth in our community that will lead to the need for a higher, likely lead to the need for a higher number of childcare services. This council has been really focused on ensuring Strathmore is a business-friendly community, including finding ways to reduce red tape. Requiring council approval for childcare services in commercial highway districts increases the cost and risk to potential business owners. For example, a direct control application alone costs $750 plus whatever consultant fees are needed to prepare that. And that's on top of the development permit fees that would come after if that direct control district is approved by council. In the end, this amendment isn't about deciding whether or not more childcare spaces are needed in our community. It's the market that will determine that. This is about council ensuring that our legislative framework is ready to meet the needs of the community as it grows, and that we are not placing an undue burden on potential business owners looking to locate within our community. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I have very little to add, except that I am in favor of this change and that it does maintain our community standards and our zoning bylaws, and that we will continue to have multiple levels of oversight going forward. And I do think that it offers persons choice in community, particularly for all those people on site, so that it is useful for us to move forward on free market principles, and on that basis, I'm very appreciative of what our professionals have put before us today, so that we have very, very sound information and knowing that we're moving forward in a good way.
Thank you. Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. Just to clarify to people at home, when we're debating discretionary use, we're simply saying that we're debating whether or not it's up to the MIN's administration's discretion or up to council's discretion. As it currently is, it's up to council's discretion. I'm leaning toward not supporting tonight's motion. I I think that the areas that we're talking about are designed for speed of traffic and traffic efficiencies. Highways and service roads are engineered for high speeds. Highways are stinky and loud. The recent event on May 28th, 2025, with a gun being brandished, or sorry, a weapon that appeared to be a gun being brandished towards children at one of these facilities, shows us that there is an increase in exposure to transient populations, hitchhikers, and opportunistic offenders. There are vacancies already being reported in our childcare facilities today, and there are alternatives to this. So council could still, if everything stays exactly as it is, council could still, at council's discretion, allow one of these facilities. And the neighborhoods that we have currently allow for higher childcare. So I recognize and appreciate what the rest of council is saying, why it's a benefit, but I would prefer if it remained in council's hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Mitzner?
I will not be voting in favor of this change. I believe the children are the future of our town, which will soon be a city. And the highway locations, to me, are too congested, too much traffic, and off-street parking in a highway commercial district is usually congested. So no, I will not be in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. I was trying to make up my mind about this decision, so I asked administration to give me an example of a site that they felt would not be appropriate, that would not, if they applied their discretion, that would not be passed. And I was hoping that would give me some comfort, to know that, it's like, because this is a big responsibility, and I take the responsibility of council very seriously, and I take the responsibility of council decisions, especially when there's the safety of children involved, very seriously. So I was looking to get some assurance that so when I pass the reins, or agree or vote to pass the reins, that it would be to somebody that I guess is shares the same concerns as me, or at least is thinking like that shares kind of some of the same ideas about what may be an appropriate site or not appropriate site. The commercial highway district in Strathmore is quite large due to the fact that we have a major highway, the Trans-Canada Highway number 1, running through our town. And I'm not sure, for instance, with Okotoks, what highway is running through that, or if there's even childcare on the commercial highway zone for Okotoks. But there are in town here probably appropriate places to put childcare in the commercial highway zone. Are those spaces very common? Personally, I don't think so. Recently, we had a group come to council to ask about locating a childcare facility at Strathpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we were being recommended by administration to allow that land use to happen there. I personally felt at the time, and in hindsight even more so, that was not an appropriate spot to put childcare. And so I was looking for assurance, I guess, that, again, that, if we're going to pass the reins on a big decision like this, or an important decision anyways, that, that we can know that, again, like the discretion will be applied, and that discretion, will match, roughly our own kind of perception of what is appropriate there. So I wasn't able to get that assurance, you know, as part of trying to determine if this is appropriate. And, you know, and I look at some of the metrics that are used or that are being suggested to be used by administration for gauging whether or not a child care facility would be appropriate for a certain site. And I look at those and I don't even believe that the Strathpoint development would have met some of those conditions. And so I'm, you know, given that that was being recommended for us to pass, and, you know, it doesn't really seem to match what, you know, like the metric for conditions for a good location would be, I'm kind of concerned that that, you know, there would be childcare places possibly put somewhere where it's not appropriate, or at least where I don't personally agree with. I think that there's moral responsibility involved with this decision. And, you know, who should that moral responsibility fall on? You know, if we give the decision to administration, it is still council's moral responsibility. If we make the decision, it is council's moral responsibility. It is currently at the discretion of council. Council, as it's been mentioned, has approved a facility that I don't know that it's childcare necessarily, but it's for, I believe, the FAME group is what we're referring to. And then we denied a subsequent application. So it looks like council it looks like to me like the process currently that we have is working. There are some things that are being passed. There are some that are not being passed. Councillor Langmaid raises a good point actually about the cost of doing a direct control application and going through that process. It sounds prohibitively expensive to me. And so perhaps if this doesn't pass, you know, perhaps we could review some of our processes around doing direct control applications, especially for things like, you know, if somebody wants to locate a certain type of business that is not discretionary or permitted in a certain area. Because, you know, there's also costs after the fact as well. You know, we could put this in the hands of administration and somebody appeals it, and then we have to, you know, pay for the costs of the subdivision of development appeal board, as well as other costs of, you know, conducting an appeal and any sort of, you know, factors that go into that. And so I'm not convinced that this is the best way forward. And so for that reason, I will not be supporting this change. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as my comments, I would say this, that as a retired teacher, children have always been incredibly important to me. My children came through the school system here. Now I have grandchildren. I see things as a parent and as a grandparent. I feel as a town councillor, I need to have a say in these areas of approval near the highway for childcare. I have full faith in our administration and our planning department. I've always trusted them, and I know the difference between operations and governance. But in this case, where children are so important, I would not feel right delegating the decision to others, so I will not be supporting this motion tonight. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you. And if I might just maybe close out the discussion with some final thoughts of mine. Some of the considerations that would be considered for the development permit and to have a childcare facility move forward within the commercial highway district are traffic and access, site layout, compatibility with surrounding uses, safety and design, and capacity and scale. And I'm humble enough to know that I am not an expert in any one of those 5 things. But I do know that we employ experts in all 5 of those things. We have planners and engineers and fire safety professionals that are far more qualified to determine whether something is appropriate than I am. I also know that having planning decisions based on a counselor's personal belief on what they think should move forward is potentially problematic in that it is unpredictable. And why would, if I were a business looking to locate in Strathmore and I knew that I would have to go through this process with no way to predict what the outcome might be because it's not done on a consistent basis, it's done on what we personally believe, I think that's prohibitive to business development and prohibitive to bringing these services into our community that I know 10 to 15 years from now, we're going to need a significant number of daycare spaces in our community. We have a number of families coming to live here. So in terms of governance and who should be making these decisions, I would be comforted knowing that it is professionals that are considering these applications and doing so on a consistent basis with consistent review and who are consulting with the appropriate bodies to make these decisions rather than me based on my personal belief. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Worship. I do not know if there will ever be a childcare center at this location that we're currently discussing today. But as a parent and a grandparent and an educator for more than 40 years, I also know, and a counselor here, that once I put my faith in the professionals that have given their lives to putting parameters around such things, that it is not my moral responsibility to dictate where individuals place their children in care, just like it's not my decision to decide which schools they attend or how they choose to parent their children within the parameters that are set for all of us in this society. And so by that, I think that we have an obligation to give people choice. And when this first came before council, and after it was rejected at the council table, I had the opportunity to speak to young people who work on that site, and many of whom are very young parents, and who were very, very open and excited about being able to place their infants in a facility that was accessible and close to where they worked. And many of them live within many of the people who work there live within walking distance. And so out of respect for them, I believe that it's my moral responsibility as a person of fiscal conservatism to give them choice in what they determine to be in the best interest of their children.
Thank you. Any further comments, discussion? I will call the question. All in favor of the motion? And opposed? And the motion is defeated. That brings us to item 6, public hearing. 6.1, land use bylaw amending bylaw number 25-16, textual amendments. The public hearing for bylaw number 25-16 is in session at 7:58 p.m. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M-26, and amendments thereto. Legislative Services.
Thank you, Worshiping Council. As you said, the purpose of the public hearing is to discuss bylaw 2516, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw. First reading was given during the May 21st, 2025 regular council meeting. The public hearing was advertised in the following ways. May 27th, 2025, a notice of the public hearing was posted on the town's website. June 18th, 25th, and July 2nd of 2025, notice of the public hearing was posted in the Strathmore Times. And from June 5th to July 2nd, 2025, a banner ad was on the Strathmore Now website. No written submissions were received to date.
Thank you, Jonathan. Pursuant to the town's council procedure bylaw, the following rules of conduct shall be followed during the public hearing to ensure procedural fairness. No person shall address council without the permission of the mayor. No person shall speak more than once. for more than 5 minutes or more than once, exclusive of the time required to answer questions from council. All discussion must be related to the proposed amendments contained in bylaw number 25-16. No other matters will be discussed at this time. Respect for staff, council, and the public shall always be maintained, and any person who wishes to address council, please state and spell your name. A reminder, this is the public's time to provide feedback to council relating to this bylaw amendment. Council is not required to answer questions from the gallery. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes, and there will be no debating the bylaw. Would administration like to present? Kate, welcome back.
Yes, please. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council again. Thank you for the opportunity to present bylaw number 25-16, which proposes a series of textual amendments to the Towns of Strathmore Land Use Bylaw number 14-11. These proposed changes are intended to ensure greater clarity, consistency, and alignment with current provincial legislation. I will now provide a brief overview of each proposed amendment. Update is the two notification timelines. Sorry. The first two amendments are technical updates to better align our bylaw with the Municipal Government Act, MGA. Currently, a refusal of a development permit application is considered received by the applicant 5 days after the decision is issued. Similarly, a notification to adjacent landowners is also deemed received after 5 days. These timelines are now proposed to be updated to 7 days, which is consistent with the timelines outlined in the MGA. Terminology clarification. The next amendment proposes to replace the term lot area with site area. The term site area is already clearly defined in the land use bylaw. Lot area is not defined, which may lead to interpretation issues. These changes will improve clarity and consistency in how regulations are interpreted and applied. Clarifying discretion. The amendment also includes the addition of the following sentence, or as determined as the discretion of the approving authority. This addition provides flexibility for the approving authority to make context-sensitive decision where appropriate, ensuring that unique or complex site conditions can be considered. Removal of maximum site area in A3 high-density residential district. Finally, the amendment proposed to delete the sentence "and the maximum site area shall be 4,000 square meters." This deletion removes an outdated and overly perspective requirement. Flexibility in site size supports more responsive and appropriate development. In conclusion, bylaw number 25-16 proposes amendments that are technical, clarifying, and compliance-driven, ensuring our land use bylaw remains accurate and aligned with provincial legislations. Administration recommends that Council consider all information presented today and any feedback received during the public hearing. Thank you for your time and welcome any questions.
Thank you, Kate. Are there any questions from council regarding those 5 items? I think they were all in our agenda packages as well. Seeing and hearing none. Is there anyone present who wishes, thank you, Kate. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to bylaw number 25-16? Administration, would you like to make any closing comments? Are you?
Thank you, Your Worship Council, for hearing my presentation. And tonight we will recommend second and third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. So I will close the public hearing for bylaw number 25-16, being a bylaw to amend land use bylaw number 14-11 at 8:05 p.m. And now that the public hearing is closed, I smacked the folder instead of the The dies. Now that the public hearing is closed, council will no longer accept any new information before making our decision. There we go. Now that brings us to item 7, bylaws, 7.1, land use bylaw, amending bylaw number 25-16, textual amendments. Deputy Mayor Mitzner.
I would like to move that council give second reading to bylaw number 25-16, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw number 1411.
Thank you. And now that we have a motion on the floor for second reading, is there discussion on this motion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Councillor Peterson.
Move that council give third reading to bylaw number 25-16, being a bylaw to amend land use bylaw number 14-11.
Thank you. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We move now to item 8, public comments. Members of the public are welcome to provide comments regarding items on the agenda tonight. This is your time to let council know your thoughts. Comments will not be taken from the gallery after this portion of the meeting concludes. While council welcomes public comments and questions, there will be no debating during this section of the agenda. Council will not take comments for items that have been or will be part of a public hearing. I'd like to remind everyone that if you do wish to speak, please raise your hand and you can be called to the microphone. Before sharing your comments, please clearly state and spell your name. We'd like to hear from as many members of the public as possible, so we ask that you try to be succinct, with comments focusing on presenting council with new information, and each member of the public will be given 5 minutes to speak to an item on today's agenda. Also, please be aware that a bell will ring at the 4-minute mark, providing you 1 minute to conclude your comments. Is there anyone who would like to speak on another agenda item tonight? Seeing and hearing none, we can move on. We move now to item 9, delegations. I don't believe we have any delegations tonight. And this brings us to item 10, consent agenda. Are there any items from the consent agenda that a councillor or councillors would like to see be removed and discussed separately? Councillor Montgomery?
No, I can make the motion, though. I think, what number did you want off?
12.2.
Yeah, 12.2 is one that I would like to see just discussed separately, please.
Okay.
And thank you for that, Councillor Montgomery.
Yep. Any other requests? No? Okay, I will move that council, I don't even have this in front of me. Thanks. Yeah, I'll move that council adopt the recommendations of the following agenda reports by an omnibus motion. 11.1, 12.1, 12.3, 12.4, 12.5, 13.2.1, 13.2.2, 14.1, and 14.2. Thank you, Councillor Peterson.
And Jonathan, are you content with that, or for the record, for the optics, do we need to read what each one is?
Thank you, Worshiping Council. As long as council is clear on what the motion is before you, I think we're good. Those
We
those
are.
items do indicate items on the agendas.
I am. I see nods around the table. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion is carried. So I guess we now move to 12.2, council meeting schedule amendments. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, our July 9th Committee of the Whole is not overwhelmingly dense, and so I am suggesting that we continue on with our Committee of the Whole meeting for July 9th and move anything that we can from the 16th to the 9th, and then I am moving that we cancel our July 16th meeting and move the agenda for July 16th regular committee or regular council meeting to July 23rd.
So that's your motion then?
Yeah, that council direct administration to move the regular meeting of council July 16th to July the 23rd to commence at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Thank you. And now that we have a motion, is there discussion on that motion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Counselor Wiley?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Counselor Peterson, did you say that we would cancel the July 9th?
No,
And then move the July 16th to the 23rd?
we would keep the July 9th. I mean, that's my understanding, that we would keep the July 9th Committee of the Whole. And if administration had things that they could move to that Committee of the Whole, that would be in their purview. But then we would move the regular council meeting of July 16th to July 23rd.
I think the concept was there wasn't enough to bring to the July 9th meeting.
If that's the case, I'm happy to cancel the Committee of the Whole and the 16th meeting and move them to the 23rd, if that's the wish of council.
So do you want to, should we just vote on your motion and then strike a new motion? Would that be the
Well,
cleanest?
nobody's voted now, so we haven't debated, so with.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't debated. I just.
If I can exercise a prerogative, and if it's the wish of council, then I would move to direct administration to cancel the Committee of the Whole meeting scheduled for July the 9th.
Yes.
And direct administration to move the July 16th meeting to the 23rd to be held in council chambers at 6 p.m. on July 23rd.
That's the cleanest, thank you. Comments on that? Counselor Wiley, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I have a question for administration. Is there any way that the reports that were going to be presented on the 16th could be ready for the 9th?
So thank you, Councillor Wiley. Through the chair, my recommendation is actually no. There's a couple of more complex reports that we did have a chance to assess earlier today, and those reports would either have to come on the 23rd, or alternatively, there would need to be a special council meeting that would need to be scheduled.
Oh, I quite like that. I have no objections to this motion. So essentially, if I can just understand it, we would cancel the July 9th and move the July 16th regular council meeting to July 23rd. Is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on Counselor Peterson's motion? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried, and thank you very much, Council. We move now to item 12.6. Jonathan, sorry.
Excuse me, Your Worship. Going back to item 12.2, administration was also reviewing our upcoming agenda meetings. And we had the September 10th Committee of the Whole meeting we were wanting to present to council as an option to potentially cancel, or if council would like to meet still, change it to a regular council meeting. The reason being, as we get close to the election, if we brought something at that September Committee of the Whole, it would be several months before it would come back to council for decision. So.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Montgomery.
I will move the council direct administration to cancel the Committee of the Whole meeting scheduled for September 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Thank you. And is there discussion on that motion? Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, the only thing that I would say is consistent with the remarks of administration, that if they saw issues that were of import, they could make that a regular council meeting at the call of the chair, and as we regularly would do if a meeting was needed at that time. But I support the motion.
Any further comments? All in favor? And that motion is carried. And now we move to 12.6, 2025 Capital Budget Amendment, Aerial Ladder Truck Initial Payment. Fire Chief Sturgeon, good evening and welcome. And thank you to you and your department for all that you did in that breakfast. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to help you as much this year, but it's the first one I've missed in quite a while, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely, no problem.
Did you guys serve 1,100 people?
We figure about 1,500 plates that
Wow.
we served, yeah. So it was a
Nice.
very busy day, excellent day. Everybody was very happy, so it was nice to see. So, thank you. Good evening. So, good evening, Your Worship, member of council. Thank you for your time. This report today recommends the 2025 capital budget amendment to approve a $350,000 deposit towards the purchase of a replacement aerial ladder fire truck This apparatus is essential for maintaining community safety and preparedness, particularly as Strathmore continues to experience higher density growth and increase in multi-story residential developments. Our current aerial apparatus, purchased in 2009, will reach its end-of-life service in 2029. The proposed budget amendment would allow the town to secure pricing now and avoid the projected 10% cost increase by the end of 2025. The total vehicle cost is estimated at roughly $3 million Canadian. Only 5 years ago, this same truck was closer to $2 million Canadian. So as you can see, the price of the equipment has increased exponentially as of the last 5 years and does not show any signs of slowing. With this initial payment, we will lock in current pricing and provide ample time for long-term financial planning with no further payments required until 2027 and the final delivery payment in late 2028 or 2029. This is in alignment with the retirement schedule of the current unit. This purchase directly supports Council's strategic priority of community wellness and the town's level of service policy by ensuring we can respond effectively to fires in higher density residential developments, multi-story buildings, and large commercial or industrial spaces. Funding for the $350,000 initial payment will be split between the fire reserve for $200,000 and the financial stabilization reserve for $150,000. A responsible approach that minimizes tax impacts. We will also work to find funding for this project through grants, alternative revenue sources, and revenue generated by provincial deployments if council directs us to do so. As we look toward a growing and increasingly urbanized community, securing this vital piece of equipment now ensures we continue to deliver safe, effective fire protection well into the future. Thank you for your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Mayor Mitzner, followed by Councillor Wegener.
So is this a newer truck to the one that had the Canadian flag on it? Like, is that the older truck?
Yeah, so that's the current, so there's two names for them, aerial or ladder. They're essentially the same trucks, but that is our current ladder truck. And that one is 105 feet tall when it's fully out. And the new truck would basically be the equivalent of that, obviously just with the newer technology and a newer apparatus.
And that will accommodate a 4-story or 5 plus, or just 4?
So there's been talk about 6-story. 6-story is essentially 84 feet high. So as long as through planning, which they always do, is ask us for our comments, as long as we have adequate ingress into the property and we can stage appropriately, we would have no problem servicing those.
And
those
is
units.
there any revenue opportunities for the older truck, or you would keep both?
So that gets a little trickier. Obviously, as fire apparatus age, so it's a 20-year lifespan on a fire apparatus, and that's for your fire underwriter survey, which is essentially your insurance premiums for commercial and residential. So outside of, I think the only province in Canada that does not have the same requirement is Saskatchewan. So we could look at potentially selling it out in Saskatchewan, or there is some places in the US that will still take older apparatus. The problem with it is, you know, we talk about a truck that's a few $1 million, like we'd be lucky to get 10% of that cost as a payback on that. So I could bring it back obviously to council once we got a firm price on it to see what your wish would be there. The other option would be using those trucks for training so that we're not using our frontline apparatus and increasing the hours on those to keep those operationally ready. We could store those trucks and use them for training only. So in the winter time, we would basically decommission them and then just bring them out in the spring until the fall and use those during those times. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Councillor Wegener.
Again, thank you for this. Councillor Mitzner answered asked most of my questions. So with that, again, the old aerial, again, you say that selling it is not really feasible. I'm assuming that it can't be used as a second line truck if needed, or is there a need for a second ladder truck?
So the the idea behind it, so once it gets past its 20-year lifespan, the certification every year that we'd have to go through to keep that a frontline apparatus would be too cost prohibitive for council. Obviously, I could bring that back, but I think it would just be something that would be wasteful spending. So not to say it's not feasible to sell. We could sell it, and obviously we'd try to maximize our price on that. If council wishes us to sell it, that's definitely something I'll look at and get a firm price for you. So I wouldn't say that selling it's not feasible, but we just do have some options for sure.
And again, yeah, that wasn't an issue. Again, the selling was the one question. The other, again, just to confirm for anybody watching that the current truck right now is due to be replaced we receive it probably in around 2029. Was that? So another 4 years approximately, just to confirm that the one that we have is still mechanically sound and is not going to put people at risk during operations?
Yeah, absolutely. So our town mechanic, if you've never met him, he's an amazing guy and takes good care of our stuff. And obviously we do multiple checks. Like we check the trucks every day, and some trucks multiple times per day. So we're always exercising and making sure that everything works. And the last time that unit, we did have to do a bit of pump work on it that I brought back to council. That's been completed. We don't foresee any issues outside of regular wear and tear for the lifespan of that truck. So we should be good for that.
And yeah, and those are all my questions. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Mitzner.
I have just one question for myself and the public. The lineup was quite congested yesterday, and what is the purpose of the boot? And is it a continuous fundraiser, or where you have the boot set up?
Sorry, I'm lost on the question.
There was
The
a
boot?
fireman's boot. Were you selling raffle tickets or taking money or
Oh,
something?
sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So the boot generally is just put out when we do community events. And so that just is a chance for people that wish to donate to the fire department, that they could donate in that boot. And we did sell 50/50 tickets as well during that time, just as a way to bring in some extra cash for that breakfast. Obviously, with the price of food and things, everything's going up quite a bit. So we're just making sure that we could recover the cost of that breakfast, which we're generally even. We don't make a lot on it, but it's more about a community event than
Well, and
making money.
compliments. Everyone was excited. They were real eggs, not powder. Thank you.
Councillor Langmaid, then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question of clarification here. In our report, it's saying that making this initial payment for the fire truck now will lock in the pricing that we have currently, but that's exclusive of any sort of tariff impacts that might become. Who knows in these days, but there might be tariff impacts, because I do believe we're sourcing this from the US. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's a couple answers for that, but generally how it works, so there is Canadian manufacturers, obviously there's American manufacturers, but the Canadian manufacturers actually use, I think it's about 80% of the truck is still American made, with chassis and the things that you just can't source here. So there is the potential for tariffs on those parts of the truck, but it would have to come from the Canadian government. And so if the Canadian government puts on the tariffs, that's where we would actually get hit. It wouldn't be the American government. And so when they did announce the retaliatory tariffs that didn't come into effect, fire trucks were on that. It did get circulated to all the fire chiefs in the country to comment on. So we did, through the CAFC, which is Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, comment on that. And it sounded like, obviously things could change, but if there were more rounds to come back, that those would be excluded from those rounds. So we're hopeful that it stays that way, but there is always the chance. What the manufacturer has said is they will only charge the direct impact. So it would just be exactly what's charged to them. There's no up fee or fee or upsell on that at all. It would be just directly across the board.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson. Oh, Mark, did you want to jump in?
Just to echo the chief's comments, ultimately, any tariffs that may or may not apply only come into effect when the vehicle is actually brought into the country. So if there's changes in 2029, when we estimate delivery of this vehicle, that's when we'll have to deal with any tariffs or non-tariff questions.
Thank you.
Councillor Peterson.
I appreciate the foresight in undertaking this in advance of the decommissioning the 2009 truck. And my question is there any need for any retrofits in the actual hall itself?
So no, our current fire hall will accept this truck, so it's essentially the same size as our current unit, so everything will fit in just the way it is. So it's essentially a replica, it's just a newer version of that truck, so.
Thank you.
Councillor Wagoner.
I'm ready with the motion.
Thank you.
I move that council approve a 2025 capital budget amendment of $350,000 for the initial payment associated with the purchase of an aerial ladder truck, with $200,000 coming from the fire reserve and $150,000 from the financial stabilization reserve. And if I can
Thank you.
just talk.
You bet.
Again, I just wanna thank you and your department for everything that you guys do, looking out for our best interests here within the community. I'm happy to serve on that committee with the REMP, Regional Emergency, or Wheatland Regional Emergency Response Management Plan, working with you and your deputy chiefs and Director Pretzlaff. So I'm just extremely happy and that of the work that you guys do, and it just makes me feel, it should give us all a sense of security. So again, thank you for that.
Thank you. And again, from a budgetary standpoint, I think this gives us a great deal of help as far as planning and getting ready for the final payment of that truck. So thank you again for everything. Any other comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Chief. We move now to item 13, Councillor Information and Inquiries. 13.1, questions between councillors and council statements. Do any councillors have any questions for fellow councillors, or do you wish to make any statements? Okay, thank you. Then we move now to 13.3, question and answer period. Do any councillors have any questions for administration? Seeing none. Administrative inquiries, do we have any tonight, Jonathan? I don't believe we do, and we have no notices of motion. So the only thing left is for me to adjourn the meeting at 8:27 p.m. Thanks, everyone.